Human Vengeance. Chapter 5. Opening the Box. Mission Control was a hive of activity. As the launch of the modified shuttle drew closer, they repeatedly ran pre-mission checks. With the crate's unknown nature, they couldn't leave anything else up to chance. Anything that could potentially cause even the slightest problem was found, and a workaround was put in place. Above the main floor, a video link was active. On the other side was Admiral Juan Hervos. He was in charge of the ships chosen to retrieve the crate. They had 2 ships proposed for the actual recovery. Surrounding them would be a submarine, 2 cruisers, and 4 destroyers. Nearby, an aircraft carrier was stationed. In the event of it acting hostile, they were primed to engage. Time passed as final steps were taken to ensure the success of the operation. As the countdown began, an expectant hush fell over the technicians. They watched their instruments, keeping a firm eye out for any issues. But to their relief, nothing cropped up. The shuttle was launched without issue, blazing up through the atmosphere. Remote control was established, a redundancy to prevent loss of life in the re-entry plan. From the safety of the ground, they piloted the shuttle into a low orbit. Minute adjustments were made to bring it into an intercept path. The already quiet control room fell into a dead silence. A screen showed the nose of the shuttle as it headed towards this extraterrestrial crate. As it drew closer, the size difference became apparent. This crate could easily hold the shuttle itself, with room to spare. The shuttle drifted next to it, waiting for something to happen. But the crate remained inert. Relieved, the recently attached arm was released. It reached out, taking a grip on a section of the crate where clamps were assumed to connect. A second soon followed, barely long enough to make another attachment. Once secure, it began to adjust the course. By making smaller corrections first, additional data were gathered on how the crate moved. Calculations were run by multiple teams, with the results compared. A best estimate of the trajectory was made, as much as could be expected without more accurate measurements. Finally, the shuttle made a major adjustment to bring it into a decaying orbit. Surrendering to gravity, the pair began to fall. The shuttle stayed close to it, protecting its connections as much as possible. They hit the atmosphere hard, creating a fireball-like effect as they burned through the sky. With the shuttle already made up as an acceptable loss, it came as no surprise when parts began to break off. Sections lost power, and flows of data stopped. However, it fell true. The catchment team began to power towards the landing site, as together crate and shuttle slammed into the water. As expected, the shuttle was completely lost. The impact had torn it to shreds, its final mission complete. But the crate was almost perfectly intact. Under careful observation, it was collected. But as above, it remained inert. Nevertheless, it was swiftly taken to a prepared shipyard. It was there, beneath harsh white lights, we discovered what they had left for us. The first to approach were soldiers who had voluntarily signed up for it. With weapons drawn, they carefully drew close to it. As they stepped in front of what appeared to be the front of the crate, a green light flashed. It was swiftly followed by the unmistakable sound of a lock disengaging. One of the crate's doors swung open slightly, and a carbon copy of that emotionless, synthetic voice spoke. "Congratulations on retrieving our gift. Use it and join us." A pair of the volunteers took point, each taking hold of one of the crate's doors. After a silent countdown, they opened them, with their lack of weight causing each to momentarily lose their balance. Rifles were aimed inwards, and the gift sat before us. A strange craft sat within, polished to a sheen. Behind it rested a set of what looked to be servers, flashing with a multitude of lights. Human Vengeance. Chapter 6. The Reveal. With care, the soldiers swept both crate and craft. Only once they were sure both were clear did they let scientists approach. Each had a look of awe and wonder at what was left. They each wanted to know how it all worked, how to produce it. They first did their own walk through. Pictures were taken of every surface from multiple angles, Notes were scribbled down of both first impressions and theories. Temperatures were taken, Geiger counters were moved through it all. Every conceivable scrape of data was measured and recorded, all before anything was removed. The first to be shifted out was the craft. With one team of scientists, engineers, and guards, it was taken to a secure airfield. There, they began basic testing to understand its controls and systems. It was soon followed by the servers. Each rack was taken with great care and linked to a set of isolated computers. There, data analysts and IT engineers started to work on understanding what went through it. Finally, the crate itself was taken for analysis. It survived a literal crash landing and kept its contents intact. Whatever was in that would be understood and utilized elsewhere. If the material could be understood, it could be replicated. The defensive possibilities were enormous. The world had their eyes on this. Whilst locations were kept secret, the knowledge of this was not. Anger rose again at their treatment of us. They gave gifts, after tearing throughout cities like they were nothing. It was salt on the wound, another thing for us to repay in blood. The first major discovery came from the servers. As they tried to create a bridge between two different computing languages, they found the server language shifting. It changed itself to match the sacrificial computers. From there, we discovered the source of the voice, a semi-AI. Limited by the data it was on and by various protocols, its ability to grow was stunted. But it was enough to hold a half-decent conversation. It had no name, referring to itself as simply the AI, but what it did have was a whole array of information. The servers were a virtual gold mine. They held schematics of the craft, its engine and FTL drive. It held the basics of shielding technology, thousands of different designs, each helpful to reach the stars. Not only that, it gave us our first insight into the 9 races that preceded us. The Zvarg, tall and thin, looking much like Ents with purple hide in place of bark. They were the first race to ascend to the stars. They claimed to be the leaders, born to be in charge. They made the rules. They had made the law that led to our pain, the Quelon. Much shorter, appearing to stand about half a meter tall, they resembled wood lice with longer limbs. They were expert architects, responsible for much of the construction on the galactic stage. The Crescent, lumbering Goliaths who lacked any form of eyes. They were miners according to the records, like moles crossed with elephants. Jumnio. They made many people uncomfortable to look at, as they looked like oversized maggots. According to their data, they ate refuse, a sort of biological waste treatment. Avansi is a classic hive mind situation, a chunkier version of a praying mantis with an additional set of arms. They were just general labor, keeping the galaxy turning. The Tumvunquin, a bird-like species with tiny arms on their chest. They boasted speed, with the highest reaction times recorded. It made them prized as pilots, able to process extraordinary amounts of information at high speed. The Siva. The best way to describe them was as a lizard man, the sort that appeared in conspiracy theories. With their apparent love for science and technology, they augmented themselves almost non-stop. The Hypale, a crab-like race. Being remarkably long-lived, they apparently were passionate about both learning and teaching. They made up much of the education sector, both as student and teacher. Finally, there was the Duthap. They were young, only having joined the galactic stage in the last 100 years or so. Being long of limb and furry, they were supposedly making a name for themselves in food production. 9 other races of intelligent life, each of which played their part to help the others. But the Zvarg were the ones to truly strike us as our targets. They spoke too highly of themselves. They saw themselves as chosen to enlighten other races. They set the rules, and we were going to break them.